after 9 o'clock. HealthNet hosted by Vincent on Radio Fm90. Excited because I have a full studio, and I think it's probably Doc, the very first time we have an equal number of gents and ladies in studio. For some reason, as you as producer of the show, you disproportionately invite more males on the show. But I'm glad. So I'll just have our guests introduce themselves, and probably when they do it, we'll let the cat out of the bag where the discussion is going to go. I usually say ladies first because we only have one lady in studio at the time, but now I guess we'll go with Dorothy. You want to go first?
Okay. A very good morning to our dear listeners on Radio One, right?
Yes.
Yes. Deeply honored to be having these conversations with you this morning, and I'm looking forward to these deliberations. I am Dorothy Amron, and I work as a technical advisor on gender issues and sexual reproductive health rights in general and the right to health.
Yes, at
the Center for Health, Human Rights and Development.
Interesting. I think it's not more than I think a couple of weeks ago we had Sehad here. I'm glad that you guys are becoming our permanent friends. Then we have Sharina. Yes, please.
A lovely good morning.
And say hello to listeners.
A lovely good morning to everyone. I'm so glad to be here. My name is Yikpamungu Sharina, and I am part of the Youth Advisory Committee of representing Uganda Network of Young People Living with HIV under the Right Here, Right Now 2 program. And I'm really excited to talk about issues that concern young people in the field of sexual reproductive health and rights. And yes.
You have a very unforgettable name, Ikpamungu. Difficult but unforgettable. Doc, you want to say hello to our listeners?
No, I always say hello to listeners and also to remind them that Mpox is around and WHO is urging rapid access to Mpox diagnostics. So it has actually invited manufacturers to emergency review. So if you're among those that can make rapid diagnostics, you could actually get shortlisted so that you start manufacturing. Because Mpox is actually for real. It's the numbers are increasing. I think we've so far lost more than 35 people in the DRC, and a fifth person was identified in Uganda, I think.
A fifth person was identified in Uganda, but they have not passed on.
They have no?
They've not passed on. They're still alive.
No, they're still alive.
All right. I think that that will cover it for the health review for this health news review for this week. And yes, let's remain. And you said the precautions we can take are very similar to what we used to do under COVID.
That of COVID,
yes,
including being even more. So you have to make sure that, especially those who are at risk of getting infection, the elderly, the very young, and people who are having immune suppressive therapies, they need to be extremely protected. So everyone should be protected because Mpox presents exactly like flu, but it can be more severe than flu.
All right. Okay, but that's not where the discussion is going to be going today. Today we are going to the field of menstrual health and management in Uganda, and Yikpamungu and Dorothy here are the ones to take us through this discussion. And I will start with you, Dorothy. Well, yes, I'll start with you, Dorothy.
Yes.
First of all, when we talk menstrual health and hygiene, what are we talking about? What does it encompass?
So menstrual health hygiene literally just in simple terms means the care one accords themselves during the red days, what we call the red days, or the biological experience when a woman expels blood from her body, or any person of reproductive age. I think these days we even hear 9-year-olds getting their menstrual, or the periods, I mean. So it's basically how do you manage those days. It could be in school, it could be out of school, but the whole point is the World Health Organization typically lays down for us guidelines, and they recognize that menstrual health literally means that women and girls and other people who menstruate have access to information and education about it, and also to the menstrual products they need. And when we say menstrual products, of course, we've heard about pads, or sanitary towels. The common one in Uganda is always. Yeah, when you go to supermarkets, there's always. Of course, also we have tampons that can be used, because a pad is a pad and the tampon is also a tampon. Of course, people have different ideologies about the different menstrual products.
Yeah.
There are those that are reusable, and then there are those that you just use once and you dispose of. Yeah. Depending on how heavy your menses are, like your periods. So basically, who says that you have to have access to the right information, and you have to be educated about it, and then you have to be able to access products that you need during those red days. And typically, a normal person can go from 3 days to 7 days.
Okay.
Yeah, and that is based on your hormones being regulated. But we also have instances where there are abnormalities, and some people bleed on for even 2 weeks. The doctor is here, will give us the science of that. But you should be able to access the commodities, and water is critical for menstrual health, hygiene, or management. That's, of course, sanitation. When you have water, there's sanitation, clean environment, and all. And then you also have to have disposal facilities, whether it's within a home or outside home, like, for example, schools, because we'll be talking about young girls' brides in schools later. You should be able to dispose of, like, for example, the commodities that you use, or the use, say, pads. Yeah. And finally, you should be able to be supported in those days in whichever space you occupy. There should be empathetic care given to you to be able to operate and enjoy your livelihood like any other person within your society or within that environment that you're living in at that particular time. And most of our guidelines, we get them from the World Health Organization, which we domesticate. So briefly, that is what we mean by menstrual health management.
All right. So, Sharina, Dorothy here gives us a very technical explanation of menstrual health and hygiene. Yeah. I want to look at it or understand menstrual health and hygiene through the lens of young people. These days, Gen Z, I don't even know if you follow the segment, but Gen Z has become the common coined word for the younger generation. But yes, you who one is, but also interfaces and represents the young people. So what is what is menstrual health and hygiene in your perspective? But B, and very importantly, I need you to comment on how much do the young people who are consumers of menstrual health and hygiene, how much do they understand about it?
Oh, thank you. Like you said, from the young people's perspective, we understand that approximately about 52% of the young population are young women who are already under reproductive health, like they are in the stage where they are ready to actually get into reproductive health. So, and you understand that access to menstrual products is a bit challenging to very many young people in the country, because of various issues. And I'm talking about things like stigma and discrimination around the topic. Up to now, it's still a taboo to talk about menstruation in public. And we're also talking about infrastructure in the different settings that we find young people. You find that recently we had what we call Alliance Week, organized by the SRHR Alliance, and we're in Kabarole district, and we went to some primary schools, and you'll be surprised that young girls do not have access to actually proper cleaning facilities. So you find that they have one latrine for the boys and one latrine for the girls. Like there is no provision for a bathroom and proper water supply for the girl child to take care of herself during that period. And you understand, in the perspective of young people, I personally understand that menstruation is a very difficult time for any young girl or woman in the country, because it comes with so many difficulties and it affects their life entirely, because I'm talking about 4 to 5 days of missing school because of, let me say, period cramps, and some of them actually do not have access to these absorption materials like sanitary pads. Like when you check in Karamoja, it's so sad that girls up to now actually have to sit in soil for the whole day and for all the days that they're menstruating. And that puts them at a very high risk of, obtaining more infections. So, and you find someone is going to use a normal polythene bag and put in like 2 holes where she can put it on like a panty. And the female reproductive system in its nature is a very delicate system. So it puts young people at a risk. And also, much as we have the government lowering taxes, actually removing taxes for these sanitary pads, they're still expensive, because I'm looking at a family that actually lives on $1 per day, and a pad is literally 3,500 and even above. And tampons, and the other issue is young people do not actually have information on the other absorption methods.
All right.
Yes, and you find that what they only know are pads, and if they do not know pads, they're using cotton cloths and very many other things. But me personally, Sharina, just recently I got an award, and it was from a YouTube video that I created, where we made some innovative pad called the Instant Pad, which I was able to learn from a very good trainer called Eric Omondi during menstrual health training. And it just shows that we can address this issue using available resources. It's just a matter of using a plate, a needle, and some cotton cloth and PVC. There's no more coverers, the ones you see when parents are using for their babies. And it just requires someone to put in their time and actually just stitch it up together. And you find that any person in any hard-to-reach area can actually pick up the skill, and you can use this pad for as long as you can, and you can have as many. Yes.
And you can make it yourself.
You can make it yourself.
Interesting.
Yes.
Now, I guess I have to give this caveat very early. I grew up in a time where the time you typically talk about, where menstrual hygiene was almost taboo to talk about. It was akin to it was akin to talking about sex, right?
I was going for singing a song related to sex.
Actually, what I very, very typically remember is about P6, P7, they would divide us, and you'd have like a girls' talk and then a boys' talk. And they would talk to the girls about the girls thing. So I am very green about some of these things. So I don't know, but some of the questions I may ask may be very rookie. However, one, talking about the challenges around menstrual hygiene, and she very ably talked about the lack of safe spaces, where you're saying, I think you just have a toilet, like a girl's toilet, boys' toilet, there's no bathroom.
And what separates it is a wall.
Do the communities actually appreciate that there is a need for a bathroom for these girls to be able to have, good menstrual hygiene? Do the communities appreciate this and actually see it as a challenge? Or is it our bird's eye view that is, viewing it as a challenge?
So I think when you're talking about menstrual health management, it spreads broadly beyond providing commodities like sanitary towels, It goes to structure or infrastructure, like if it's within schools, how well facilitated are the restrooms or the bathrooms? Are they providing the privacy that a girl will need to be able to help herself when it's the time of the month? And this should be even by design, because if we're talking about equality and non-discrimination, for example, and access to, say, education. Inclusivity is a very critical issue. So even when you're doing like construction for schools, you should be alert at the back of your mind that the girl's body has unique functions. Actually, the Constitution recognizes the unique maternal functions of women. And it pledges to support women to fulfill those maternal functions. So they spread to social and economically and legally, like the political arm. So when you're saying communities, do they appreciate? First and foremost, from the engagements that we have different projects. She's mentioned about right here, right now, about young girls' sexual reproductive health rights. We also have the World Hunger Project that looks at the impact of climate, for example, and social reproductive health rights, the intersectionality, and I think that's what you're talking about. When you're talking about communities, most of them shy from anything to do with sexuality education. Let me blatantly put it that way.
Yes, yeah, sure.
You talked about you being green about these issues or topics about sex, and you're very right, because even as in the environment we grew up in, even just being aware about yourself or your body was taboo. You know, you can't walk naked, you have to behave this way, you have to do this. Now, it's the same thing with the community. When people are ignorant about a subject, you don't expect them to do much about it. So if it's about bathrooms within homes, you'll find that most homes don't even separate bathrooms. You know, you'll find men using the same bathrooms with women, and don't blame them, because it's not a luxury for most homes. When you look at the poverty margins within communities, so when someone is putting up a house, they forget about the sexes, the different gender that are under their roof, because they are not educated about the complicities of bodies. They'll look at you as Dorothy. What you need is just somewhere you go, mind your business, and get out of it. Yet, she mentioned about menstrual hygiene and the health complication. When you do not manage menstrual health, like if you don't manage the hygiene around that season, a girl can actually get a bad UTI from those shared bathrooms, and they can get complications that can even lead to infertility if not treated appropriately. Yes, eventually, and even get birth complications. So these structural issues are very critical. We may underlook them, but they are very important. And I'm glad you asked it from a raw perspective of, do the communities even know this information?
Yeah.
And that is it. And that's why when she's explaining about school, she's telling you that we have restrooms that are just separated by a wall. You have stigma associated, but you also have ranging hormones of teenagers, depending on the age groups and classes, where they can even probably peep over.
I hear you.
And so how is a girl supposed to feel comfortable within such an environment? Eventually you have cases of girls who, when the red days hit, abscond from school.
Yeah, true.
They feel safer within a home environment because they don't have to be conscious about themselves. And the community that you're talking about, we're talking about bathrooms, structures. But some parents don't even provide inner garments. They don't know when they last bought a knicker for a girl. When the girl puts shopping lists, during back to school, and their pads, what is this? This is a luxury.
I know.
Because rural-urban situations are very different.
True. I hear you.
Yeah, and some of them can't afford genuinely. And that's how you end up seeing girls going to chapati makers. They're enticed. For 5,000, she thinks she's going to afford a pad, but she comes back pregnant. Well, thank you.
On that very grim note, I will have to pick up more of this discussion, especially around myths and misconceptions, which, there's a laundry list of those ones, and I'll be putting them to you, and, you will help us be able to, tell between what's myth and what's true in a bit. But also, we want to see, of course, we're going to look at the challenges a little deeper, but is there a way forward? Is there something practical that we can do, like the homemade pads, and it probably spreads beyond that in terms of solving menstrual health? And we'll be discussing that right after this.
There are many business financiers out there, but none like us. We are the company that tailors our finance to offer you a fair deal and meet your unique needs as a business owner. From working capital to business property finance. With finance starting from 380 million shillings to 3.8 billion shillings. Imagine the potential we could unlock in your business. We are Business Partners International. Inquire about our specialized business finance at www.businesspartners.africa or call +256 414 505 236 or visit our offices at Nakawa Business Park, Block A, 2nd floor. Business Partners, the entrepreneur's financier.
I used to worry about everything. My son's school fees, starting my dream business, and even finishing our home. Everything seemed impossible. But then, I I discovered that DTB hassle-free salary loan. It was so easy to apply and the interest rates were competitive.
Don't let financial stress hold you back. Visit your nearest DTB branch or call 0800 242 242 for a DTB hassle-free salary loan of up to 300 million Uganda shillings, repayable in 72 months. DTB, bank with us, bank on us. DTB Uganda is regulated by the Bank of Uganda, and customer deposits up to 10 million shillings are protected by the Deposit Protection Fund of Uganda.
The Health Net Show on RadioOne Fm90.
It's 26 minutes after 9 o'clock. HealthNet hosted by Vincent on RadioOne FM90. Sherina Yikpamungu, a youth person representing menstruating girls and women. And we have Dorothy Amuron, a technical advisor with SEHAD, taking us through a discussion on menstrual health management in Uganda. We're still talking about the challenges around menstrual health hygiene programming in Uganda. And I think just before we went for the break, we were talking about, or at least you talked about the situation around poverty and how this is affecting menstrual health. I want to also talk about culture. Culture is a big thing that greatly influences how we do things, how we perceive situations, how we understand situations. Sharina, talk about the fact that we have the diverse cultures. And also, I imagine, I don't imagine, it is definitely true that before the 1900s, before the coming of the missionaries, people used to have, like, women used to have periods at that point. So, what was the culture then? How was that being dealt with then, and why aren't we applying the same things now? Or was it being dealt with wrong then? Is it there something that can be done better now?
Like you said, like we have very many diverse cultures in Uganda. Yes. I am a 2000 baby. I might not date back to the 1990s, but I get to listen from our parents when they tell us their stories. We listen to stories like during that time when a young girl is, the moment they understand that you actually have started your menstrual period, these are things that they would put you up ready for, like Baganda will take you to the bush because now you're really fertile for marriage. So like that was just like a symbol for the father to actually look for her daughter's husband. So you just find that, and young girls, they were really young, like teenagers, and you're already being introduced into marriage. And it was also a taboo back then to talk about menstruation. For some reason, like you as a woman, you're not supposed to talk about, because I feel like it's an unclean thing on a woman. That's why you find that, I don't know about now, but in the Muslims, they presume that a woman during that period is unclean and is not supposed to participate.
It actually cuts across, I think, almost all religions, really.
Almost all, but yes, so it was like a taboo to talk about it. And if you are in it, for some reason, because of that stigma, young girls, every time that would happen, they would actually lose self-esteem. And if you look into the absorption methods, these girls used to use them. I was shocked that banana fibers were actually used back then. So someone told me they soak it in water and it looks like, I don't know, malewa? I don't know, that meat-like kind of dish, I don't know. And I was like, how exactly does that work? And it was just like very disturbing. And because of such reasons, like when a girl moves into menstruation, you'd find that they would use that as a reason not to give her inheritance, because they believe like she's not in the right proper health to actually take up like family wealth. So you find like such many ideologies surrounding a girl's growth were just prohibiting their growth to become better people.
Interesting.
Yes.
Dorothy.
Yes.
I know this is not a burden we can entirely place on government, but we cannot really get their responsibility in this issue. One, I want your comment on the fund basket, if any, that's available to take care of menstrual hygiene, but and I know this is not limited to just pads. I know menstrual hygiene definitely cuts across. So talk about that. How sufficient is it, and probably is there more that we need to be doing in terms of allocation towards menstrual hygiene?
Okay, I think the debate about government's responsibility has been going on for so long. I remember, I think, was it 2015, the First Lady pledged to provide sanitary towels in schools. I think about that time. But of course, there had to be like a policy statement or regulatory framework to enable, because this has a huge financial implication onto government that is already providing, basic education for majority of the Ugandans, the universal primary education and, secondary. And the argument was, if you're going to do this, it comes with certain responsibilities and obligations. And some of them go beyond scholastics to say food in school, to creating a leveled ground for learners. And when we say learners, those are both boys and girls. And I think from the package initially, definitely sanitary towels or pads were not part of the discussions in some of these requirements. And I'm talking about this because we're also looking at the price cost and the developments that happened recently, where there was tax exemption on sanitary pads that are imported into the country, and even the incentives that are given to manufacturers of these pads within. And I think you already mentioned earlier on that despite that, the prices have not gone down. Yes. You go to supermarkets, normal pads cost between 3,000 and 5,000 Ugandan shillings,
and 10
or 10, depending on the quality, but I'm saying the bare minimum. And this means that most households or families cannot even afford that, $1 in a day. Then the reusable pads cost about 10,000 shillings, and of course they also have their own issues. If I can't access water, how am I supposed to wash that pad after? But coming back to your point, we can't really get government, and I think government has pushed collaborations with different civil society organizations and well-wishers to kind of bridge that need, not by declaring that you're going to be responsible 100% to provide these pads in schools, but to promote initiatives that at least enable access to basics like the sanitary towels at fair prices. And in 2015, the government of Uganda signed the Menstrual Hygiene Charter. Okay? And I don't know how many of us have heard about this. And the intention about this charter, together with Water School Project, was to prioritize the normalization of menstrual hygiene for girls and women in and out of schools. And what I'm talking about this is there's a clear recognition that the financial burden cannot be taken in by government. And we have had different debates about this, say the school health policy. Now, the school health policy was supposed to manage health-related issues for young people within school, and I'm assuming even menstrual hygiene. Now, government is trying in terms of policy and access to information mainly on management of menstrual hygiene, but there is no commitment in terms of provision of the sanitary towels or these commodities, because they have a high implication in terms of finances. And remember, this is consistency. You'll be rolling out people every year, year in, year out. What is our health budget looking like? The Abuja Declaration says the health budget should be about 15% of the domestic one in terms of budget lines. But we keep fluctuating and struggling between 7, 8, 6, and most of our funding comes from development partners for health. And I don't know how many of us track how much specifically goes to reproductive health service provision. And maybe this discussion is something that is, tickling our minds to think further in terms of how much can government do, how much can the community contribute. Because if you're talking about government, remember it has implications of numbers, data. Who is going to access what? Which schools? Are you saying you're going to start with government-facilitated schools?
I hear you.
What about the private? And then what are you going to do about those that are not in school in terms of access? So I think there's a lot of concentration not on provision of the services like the commodities, but more of information, access. And that's why you have different laws like within the Constitution, the Children's Act, where it lays burdens, rights and responsibilities on parents to care for health. Menstrual hygiene is part of health. Provision for the welfare of the child. Part of it is also making sure that girls are able to access commodities like menstrual hygiene related pads or inner garments to ensure that these girls are comfortable, and where there's need be painkillers. Because it's not a normal season for a woman or a girl. Ladies can relate, but we also have gentlemen who have been responsible and have taken it as their responsibility to ensure that girls are supported.
That's where I want to pick up with Sharina here. And, Sharina, I want you to talk to us about, one, what are the myths and misconceptions that are out there? But picking up from Dorothy's point, is there a role for men and boys in this discussion? Because in another forum where I work, I disproportionately work with more females. I have never been more confused on how to react as when they start to have a discussion around menstrual health. I am wondering, should I comment? Will my comment be accepted? Will I even be right? Will I even know what I'm talking about? So, myths and misconceptions, but I'm sure one of them is there even a role for men and boys in the discussion around menstrual health?
Thank you so much for bringing the topic of male involvement here. It's very, very important because if you look at this, like, reproduction is literally the basis of life, right? And we already know that once a girl gets into her menstruation, she's very much ready to actually conceive and have children. But it does not mean that immediately she gets into her menstruation, she should actually get married or have kids, because this is where we're facing the issues of teenage pregnancies. But I really feel that men need to be involved in this initiative, because a girl child is not only for the mom. We look at scenarios, when you look at it in the perspective of first aid, we do know that in our Uganda we have present single fathers. So you just cannot say that you don't want to be involved in it. It is the country's responsibility and the people's responsibility to be informed of the issues that concern the people. So as a parent, as a father, and as a boyfriend or a husband to these young women, it's important. You're not only going to walk around with condoms and keep condoms in your room. Like, once in a while have a pack of pads. Like, support a girl child. We're already talking about how one pad costs 3,000 above. I mean, you're not going to watch your sister go into a relationship with an older man just because you cannot afford or ask you for money to buy a pad. Like, men need to be informed of their role in menstruation. It is very important that they get involved because it as well concerns them. It is our responsibility to look after our young ones. And this is so sad. Around the topic of myths and misconceptions, you listen to a lot of things and you're like, wow, this actually is happening. So I'm talking about, I've had a couple of girls say that they got into sex because they felt like during their menstruation that when you have sex, it reduces your cramps.
Oh dear.
And at a very young age, someone does not have the right information and the right painkillers to take and lands in the wrong hands of people who actually have this school of thinking. And she's going to take it up because, trust me, cramp periods are very painful. And sometimes if anyone, like someone is going to tell you, like, I use this, and you're just going to take it up because you just do anything to take out that pain. And from a perspective of men, someone said, he had a story of one of the men told this young girl that if you have sex during your menstruation, you won't get pregnant. But that is a lie. We do have scenarios of people who, after their periods, go into another period. And if you understand the reproductive health system, according to the small training I was able to receive, we have two ovaries that have two fallopian tubes. And I was so surprised that there are people who go into a period and after 3 or 5 days go into another period, so there is no rest for them. So what this means that when the other fallopian tube releases an egg for this month, the other fallopian tube will release the egg for the next month. But sometimes it happens in between someone's period that when they have released on this side has also released. So that's why you find a scenario of someone getting into their period and then when you think they're getting done, they get back into another phase. So, and women who have actually gotten pregnant during their period. So, it's not true.
There's a question I have to ask there, but it's not appropriate for morning radio.
And it's so wrong for the community to hold the school of thought that once a girl reaches her menstruation, she's ripe for marriage.
Yeah.
We are... young people and very many NGO organizations are carrying out initiatives to ensure that these young girls are empowered. Sometimes I'm looked at as a feminist, but I am a believer that young girls need to be given the space to grow without having the community limiting them. I mean, every person has their own potential that God had given them. So why would a human being really put a cage around another human being to grow? So when I hear such things like marriage because you're in your menstruation, I really feel it is unfair and it is an abuse of a human right.
Well, thanks a lot for that. We're going to be talking about way forwards, like one, what, and let us look at way forward in pretty much 3 perspectives. One, what can we as individuals, what can we do to contribute to this? Dorothy very fittingly put it that we cannot squarely put this or entirely put this all on government. So we'll be talking, what can we as individuals do? What can the community do? And then also, definitely, what do we want government to do? But also to remind our listeners, and a couple of them already are sharing their comments and questions on the WhatsApp line. Please, 0703-090-090. That's the number that you can reach us on to share your questions or comments. There's a very interesting comment here from Caleb, which we'll be getting to it in a bit. Also, you can call in live in studio, 0414-346-111, 0414-348-111. You can call 0707 90 90 97. That's 0707 90 90 97 and 0774 0776 307 6394. Yes, I have Caleb. Caleb here. Caleb's comment, very interesting. Says, good morning, Vincent. Too much English from the ladies this morning. UPA education save us this morning. Doctor, what English do you use regularly on the show? Because
mine is before UPE.
Almost born before computers.
Yeah. Close. I have Bennett Gift Maridadi, and it says, thank you so much for the show, Bwana Vincent and team. Jambo to Dr. Dungo. 1. Lately, some girls aged between 12 and 13 find themselves going into their periods. This never used to be the case. What is the underlying factor to explain this? So, Bennett seems to be asking about early onset of periods, and I'm surprised that at my age, this is the first time I'm asking this question. But at what age, or I know it cannot be the same for everybody, but what's the usual or common age that girls start their period, and what would be considered early onset of periods?
I think normal growing up was between 13, 14, 15. Normal was between 13, 14, 15. And if it was really a bit abnormal, 12. But when we're having discussions right now within the Gen Z world and all alphas, we were having children go through menses like at 9 when we're interacting with doctors and nurses, 10 years. And I think the arguments definitely are around the kinds of diet and also content and exposure that stimulate hormones like that young children are being exposed to. Yeah, but this is subject to further research, just normal conversations that we have. Yes, so I think a lot has changed, but unfortunately, increasingly, there are young children or girls that are now experiencing their menses before 13, 14, 15. Yeah.
Okay. I have Francois here who says, I believe it was P4 or P5, there was a topic in science called reproduction. I think that was more P6. But anyways, that's what I cannot forget the reproduction.
That's a very interesting topic.
Oh, yeah. They'll even tell you before it's going to, like, next week is reproduction. But yes, it was called reproduction. And that's partly where I learned about, quote-unquote, the red days. And how girls dealt with it over 40 years. This does not seem like a new thing because many girls are in school, at least primary school, and we are saying this is a topic. Are we saying that this is a topic that is no longer in science class? Then it's good to understand people's cultures before assuming the Western style of dealing with these issues is before assuming that the Western style of dealing with these issues is the absolute way out. He goes on to say, more research needs to be done, especially in some remote areas, on how they survived amidst lack of Western period education. NGOs cannot be a solution to each NGOs cannot be the solution all the time, surely. This is a comment from Francois. Let me take one of our callers. Hello.
Hi, Richard. Good morning.
Hello. Hello. Okay, sorry. Unfortunately, I cannot hear you, but you can try to call any one of the other lines. You can call 0414-346-111, 0414-348-111. You can call 0774-07-6394, and you'll definitely be able to put your question, and you will be able to give you an answer. So, Francois pretty much has about different facets to his question and comment. One, there is a topic on reproduction in school, primary school in particular. I think this is also one in secondary school. Especially for O level, which is compulsory probably for everybody. So, isn't that sufficient education for the people? P6 is when we are suspecting they're about to get into their menses. Isn't this sufficient education from the education perspective around menstrual health, menstrual hygiene?
Okay, first of all, I'm happy that it's a man asking, or a male, Francois. It shows that he's really keen to this topic, and it's encouraging because we're looking for male allies to further appreciate this, support their girls and sisters and friends when they're in these red days or the menstruation days. I think his concern is the information sufficient? No, it can't be sufficient.
True.
Because that is an assumption that every girl we're talking about is privileged to go to school. That's one. And then two, when we're engaging with public and the community, there's always an assumption that sexuality education is for
adults.
School. No, for school. It's the school's responsibility to impact this knowledge onto children. And when we're talking about sexuality education, it's about the biological make. It's about management of menstruation. It's about relationships. It's about hygiene. It's about knowing your body. It spreads to education around UTIs and all these things. But like any science component, these are still topics that we do not talk about freely. And if a class teacher is going to teach about reproductive health in school, science of the body, they're going to limit themselves to the scientific,
the basics.
And they'll not go into the deeper conversations to understand every girl's unique ignorance around this issue.
Yeah.
And when they go home, parents are also shy to talk about this very issue. Now, I remember when I got my menstruation. I told my mom, there's red I'm seeing. She told me, now you need to take care of yourself, because if you mess up and play with boys, you'll get a very big stomach. A very big stomach.
There's a lot of context that
but you can imagine. No, I'm just telling you.
I hear you.
Now, that is the kind of education I got around. And that was
that's probably a lot more than a lot of people got.
No, of course she was telling me the impact, what this biological clock now meant in my life.
Oh, yeah.
But of course I was fortunate that she could afford to buy me pads and to show me how to use it and how often I can change. But how many are lucky to have this information? Because I'm telling you, we're talking about menstrual management, but it goes deeper to sexual and reproductive rights.
I hear you.
Yes.
I remember when we're starting one of the classes on reproduction, the teacher starts with the comment they go with was, I am here to teach you reproduction. I'm not here for sex education.
Because it's a taboo, they shy away. And I'm telling you, up to today when we engage in communities, you can attest to that. Girls are desperate for information. Alliance Week, or when you have like school health clubs in the corners, they are desperate to talk to you. Why? Because there's a lot of information gaps within homes, and what is given in schools is not sufficient.
And the other thing,
as you're coming in with that comment, please address Francois' other concern. He says, why are we treating this like a new thing? It is an age-old thing that has been around. More research needs to be done, especially in remote areas, and how they survive amidst the lack of he calls it westernization of period education. So what can the communities be able to do on their own without seeking Western solutions? Along with your comment.
It's very interesting. And like I just mentioned earlier, I have been a participant in the training that encourages families and young girls and women to use available tools and materials to make their own pads. But it's when you actually Alliance Week, when we went to the schools to teach these young students how to make their pads, these children were very much interested. And what does that show you? That they really needed this information, and they were very excited. Even the boys were very excited. Like, it was so funny for them, but they were excited to get into knowing this new skill. So, and it's really not enough in schools. It's just not enough, because if we look at COVID statistics, if I bring you back to teenage pregnancies, why this topic is very important, we recorded 25%, and that's like the highest in sub-Saharan Africa. And that's so sad. But I feel like if we are supposed to address menstrual health and everything that concerns it, it should be like correct information to the dot. Because I feel if young girls understand their menstrual health, we can be able to some percentage, reduce this percentage of teenage pregnancies, because they get to know that this is a very delicate stage in my life, that if I get into any sexual intercourse at a certain period in my menstrual cycle, I am most likely to get pregnant, because I know not very many people actually understand how to read the menstrual cycle. And so if they understand extensively their menstrual health, like when you give them the adequate, correct information, yes, you'll find that they're not going to be trapped in in conversations like, if you have sex during your period, then you get to get pregnant, or if if I am in my menstruation, I can get married, or like if you want to reduce your cramps, you should get into sexual intercourse. So you find that in that field, they will be able to reduce on the number of teenage pregnancies. So I feel it is very, very key that this issue is addressed by the state.
All right.
Quickly,
because we're about to go to closing remarks, which is where you'll add your comments. I'll just pick two of the comments here. Francois just has a comeback here. Says, by the way, I taught my nieces about menstrual hygiene, including use of pads, thanks to YouTube. Straight talk from back then and programs like HealthNet. I encourage men to be very interested in this topic and support women on this agenda. Why you should so how would you make men understand and be allies? I guess that's a comment from Francois. I have another one here from Zubair. Zubair says, point of clarification, in Islam we don't consider a woman in her menses as impure.
That was before.
There are certain things that she is restricted, that she cannot do while she's in her menstruation during postnatal bleeding. For example, she cannot have sexual relations with her husband, she cannot have sexual relations with her husband. She cannot pray because she's bleeding, but she can engage in other acts of worship. She cannot fast. She cannot be divorced during her menses. She cannot do the usual circumnavigation around the Kaaba, but other rituals she can be part of. So thanks for that clarification. Zubair, we have just about a minute for each of you to wrap up. Who wants to go first?
Okay, thank you so much. I think for me, my plight out there is menstrual health management is critical. Menstrual health management is critical because statistics show that about 23% of adolescent girls aged 12 to 18 drop out of school following the onset of menstruation. And so therefore we need to be supporting girls in every possible way within and out of schools to ensure that they realize their right to education but also a livelihood without feeling stigmatized against. And the responsibility falls between communities, parents, guardians, relatives, friends, but also from the government side. We had a manifesto. Yes, we had a manifesto. And I think that was a 2016-2021 manifesto of the ruling National Resistance Movement, where they had pledged to actually support schools. They may not do everything, but they can have emergency pads within schools where if a girl is stuck up, she can run to the dispensary and get this pad or can get a painkiller. Yeah. Because it's continuous collective effort. Corporate responsibility is also key. Thank you.
Sharina, 30 seconds you have. What's the parting shot you have for...
This goes to the parents. Parents need to get out of the idea that the conversation remains in the schools, or the young girl can actually get their own information. Like, we need to get into those uncomfortable conversations with our own children so that we can guide them to make the right choices. Yes. Yeah.
Thank you. I know usually it's HealthNet hosted by Vincent, but I think today I have also been Learner-in-Chief. So thank you so much, Sharina Yikpamungu, a young person who is representing girls and women. And also thank you so much, Dorothy Amuron, a technical advisor at SEHAD. We'll be back next week with yet another topic. Coming up, the news in English. Thereafter, the Saturday Cruise.